Hey guys, welcome back to the Prehistoric Life podcast. I'm your host, Eric Crawford, and today we have an interview with Tyrannosaurus. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, so my name's Harrison. I'm one of the managers of the Tyrannosaurus. We're a super cool natural history boutique slash science center in Mesa, Arizona. And our number one thing, apart from obviously being a business, is we want to get people excited about science and natural history. And one of the best things that we can do about that is to fill up our store with all sorts of really cool dinosaur stuff and to get people to come check out our business, check out all the really cool things that we have in there, and hopefully when they leave, they have a newfound appreciation for dinosaurs and natural history.
So, there's their Instagram. For all of you who are wondering, please go check out their content. It's really amazing. And I don't want y'all to just support the show, but the people that come and talk to us on the show, because without them, we wouldn't have the science itself. So one of the most basic questions that I start off pretty much every interview with is, what is your favorite dinosaur?
Ooh, probably chickens. But as far as non-avian dinosaurs are concerned, that's a really tough one because, man, there's dinosaurs just came in such a repertoire of different beautiful shapes and sizes. I am pretty interested in tyrannosaurs. I think their growth is particularly interesting. It's kind of a boring choice, but you can't beat the classics.
It's the generic one, but it's a classic and we know a lot about it.
Yes,
And
100%.
it is definitely because of it being a classic. I mean, I feel like T-Rex is a fair choice to get anyone's attention.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
If you're,
Um, the-
yeah,
I was going to say, the first thing that you see when you walk into our store is a life-sized replica of a Tyrannosaurus Rex skull. And it's always so cool because especially when you see like younger people like come into our like store and they see that, you can just see the wires going on in their head. And like I kind of say like dinosaurs and Tyrannosaurus in particular, they're such great gateways into getting kids especially excited about science because they'll see like a giant dinosaur skull, yeah, like that.
I see that.
And they automatically think like what were these animals doing in their environment, what was the world like back then, and where did they go, why are they extinct today. So yeah, super great way to get people into science.
I mean, as a kid growing up, I feel like everybody at some point in time has had a fascination with dinosaurs.
Absolutely,
I
I was
mean,
one of those.
me too. You just never grow out of it. So,
Yeah.
it, and it's that first science that really gets your attention.
Mhm.
Because a lot of people, like, you look at like a 4-year-old banging together little Triceratops and T-Rex things, you're like, oh, you're not thinking much about it. But those dinosaurs introduce you into the world of science. It's that first science.
Right. And
And
it might not lead into a career in, say, like something like paleontology, but who knows where it might go? It could lead into a career in geology, biology, anthropology. I mean, there's just so many different ways that it can go down.
I mean, it's also such just an interesting science because we don't know. We're missing most of the puzzle.
Yeah, there
What
are
is it
big
like?
chunks of the fossil record that we don't really know that much about yet,
What is it
including
like?
dinosaurs.
3% of them we know. Probably
Yeah,
less
yeah,
than that.
a good chunk of the fossil record is missing.
So that means that a vast majority. And you look at all these dinosaur species. I mean, you can scroll for. If you got a list of every single dinosaur species that we know, you could scroll for like hours trying to find something.
Oh yeah, and I mean we find new species of dinosaur like I believe it's once every 2 weeks, and every year we find like 30 new species of dinosaur. Like who knows? The people that are listening to this podcast right now, maybe they'll be the next generation of scientists that finds those new species and it helps fill in that missing gap in the fossil record. It's super cool.
I mean, yeah, it's just so bizarre to think about that there's so much history there that's basically just missing.
Mm.
And because human history seems like it's been here forever,
Hmm.
but
It's only been like a tiny fraction.
in the grand scale of time, it's nothing.
Oh yeah,
Like a grain of sand in the dust, and like
pretty much.
on a beach. Eh, that's why I find this. It's one of those things that you just look at and you're like, because you look at just like the Jurassic era. What is it? 202 to 151 million years ago.
Hmm.
Because
Or the Jurassic period.
I mean, like just in general, like dinosaurs existing. Because you say
Hmm.
65 million years. I mean, 65 doesn't sound like a lot.
Yeah,
Like,
geologically speaking, it's fairly recent. Like we kind of tackled this in one of the videos we did on our social media, and we talked about how you kind of hear it a little bit, but there's more geologic time between Stegosaurus and Tyrannosaurus than there is between Tyrannosaurus and us. Like
like
that just gives you like a better frame of just how long dinosaurs were around for
that's
and
so
how they're still
bizarre.
around today.
I mean, it'd be more accurate for a T Rex to pick up the phone than a Stegosaurus to fight a T Rex. And that's just like
I mean,
it's
he
just
could try with those two fingers, but
so bizarre to think about. I mean, and it's that time where evolution basically just exploded and did whatever it wanted. I mean,
mm,
and they're so unique, and every single one has their own attributes that make them so unique, and
yeah,
it's just fun to study them. I mean,
oh yeah, and seeing how different clades and families like evolved over time and replaced previous ones too, I think is very interesting. Like how different dinosaur groups replaced one another, like right up till the end of the Cretaceous. It's pretty interesting.
I mean, it's really crazy to think about because you can kind of see where the evolution goes. Like in the sorry, like Triassic, you have things like Herrerasaurus, and then in the Jurassic, you get like Allosaurus, and then you can kind of see how it turned eventually into something like T Rex.
Hmm.
You can kind of see the chain there, and it's just really interesting to look at. I mean,
Oh yeah, I agree 100%.
mm, I mean, one of the one of the craziest things to me is that the massive sauropods just kind of disappear in the Cretaceous.
The sauropods are kind of interesting because they went extinct for a while in North America for quite some time at the very beginning of the late Cretaceous. And it wasn't until like the very end, like maybe around like 70 million years ago in the Maastrichtian, that sauropods started migrating again, like up through South America into North America, which is why we find things like Alamosaurus in Texas, like right at the very end of the Cretaceous. It's really cool. They were doing like fairly well, like elsewhere in the world, but they had been gone for such a long time, like in North America, and they were only just starting to get right back into like the southern, what would become the southern United States, right towards the end of the Cretaceous. Kind of makes you wonder, if that asteroid hadn't hit the Yucatan, where that would have gone.
Where that evolution would they have kept getting bigger? Would they have eventually gotten smaller?
We'll never know.
I mean, one day we might. Who knows?
Oh yeah, maybe we've got to find more data.
Yeah, I mean, for those of you who don't know some of the random names, we're talking about the late Cretaceous. So you're right about here. For all of you who are trying to look on, it probably looks blurry right now.
Yeah, it's a cool poster, man.
To us, it definitely looks blurry, but it will look better in editing, hopefully. I mean, I keep that there just because it's easier than drawing out one also, yeah, like you said, it's a cool poster. So
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and even before the dinosaurs, there was so much before them. I mean,
Oh yeah,
eh,
yeah. Dinosaurs are fairly recent.
it's
Um, like where I live in Arizona, during the Paleozoic, like Arizona, most of the Paleozoic Arizona was under the ocean. Um, I actually have some cool fossils here that I collected from the Martin Formation in Camp Verde. It's kind of hard to see, but those are Devonian aged brachiopod shells from like over 360 million years ago.
that's cool.
I don't know if you can really see in the camera, but
You'll be able to make it out, hopefully.
yeah.
I mean, where I am, that's not good. I'm in South Carolina, so we were an ocean for a lot of history. So we don't
Mm.
have a lot of the huge bones, except for real up north. If you go to like far north South Carolina, you can find some bones, but some of the smaller things that we find, like in the State Museum, whenever I went and visited them, let me straighten that out. They had these are just some small cases, like some shark teeth, and then here I'm just gonna take it out because it's easier. And this is like a little piece of extinct dolphin,
Oh, cool.
like an extinct dolphin species that existed. And this is a tooth that I actually found on the beach.
Whoa, that's super cool.
I mean, it was a now I'm blanking on the name, but it was an ancestor to megalodon.
Oh, super neat.
So we don't for you said your Arizona was ocean for most of history.
Yeah, so throughout most of the Paleozoic, so the era of time before dinosaurs, a good chunk of that Arizona was under the ocean. Like during the Pennsylvanian, or people commonly refer to it as the Carboniferous, Arizona was like right on the edge of like this really large, shallow seaway that was filled with all sorts of ancient reefs, which are super cool because, like, when you think of like a reef, you usually think of coral reefs, but the reefs that were here and during the Paleozoic, um, their communities were very different. So, like, you would like brachiopod reefs, you had crinoid reefs, you had sponge reefs, all sorts of really interesting ecosystems with different players, which is super cool.
I mean, because Weiss, when did coral come around?
Coral's been around for a while.
Oh, yeah.
The place where I found that brachiopod conglomerate, we do find lots of coral. There is a extinct group that's no longer around today, but some of the major groups of coral were around back then and are still around today, which is
I would
pretty cool.
imagine because coral grows pretty. I don't want to say deep in the ocean because coral reefs are usually closer to the surface.
Right. There are some deep sea corals, and those guys are pretty interesting. I don't know too much about those guys, but coral is such an interesting organism. They're animals, but they live in a like communal structure, and they have. I actually have. Here you go. Here's some Devonian coral. They have in those little indents. Those are polyps, and in each one of those there was a tiny little animal, which is super
That's,
neat.
I mean, that's very similar to just modern coral. I've got some.
Right.
There it is. Because modern coral is very similar in that way, where it's kind of got the little
That's
holes
cool.
where the animals lived in, which is, I mean,
Certain body plans just work better than others.
if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah.
Why would it need to evolve if nothing changes? I mean,
Right. And they almost certainly did. But overall, they didn't really need to change their body plan all that much
I mean,
when you're living like a fairly, um, I'm trying to think of the right word, a fairly um, like modest existence, just kind of hanging out on rocky outcrops.
yeah, I mean, coral's not really actively hunting ever, so it doesn't
Mm,
need to change to prey. So
right. Although they're pretty effective predators. Like some anemones, they have these super cool. They're like these hypodermic needle-like structures called nematocysts that are filled with really potent neurotoxin, and they're pretty effective at catching fish.
I mean, are those still around?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There's still
No.
anemones around.
So whenever you go to the beach, be careful in the water.
Right.
Sounds like something Alaska or not Alaska, Australia has to deal with. They deal with all
Right.
that kind of stuff. Um. Also, I mean, just you can hold like two fossils from the tank from far different time periods, and it's kind of hard to tell the difference just by eye.
Mm. Right. And there were some like during the Paleozoic, there were this interesting group of corals called the rugose corals or horn corals, and they're pretty interesting. They like if you see fossils of them, they almost kind of look like a. I wonder if I'm going to show off some more fossils today.
Gladly.
We have he's in here somewhere. Here we go. But this is kind of a not the best example.
Yeah, it's kind of hidden, but you can still see it slightly.
Yeah, they have a really interesting structure, and they went extinct. That whole family of corals went extinct right at the end of the Permian during um, the Great Dying, where basically everything from like trilobites to horn corals to a lot of the weird proto mammals, all those guys went
They all
extinct.
died off
Hmm.
in mass extinction number 2 or 3. It's
I think it was. Yeah, I want to say it was.
I've
I
got
think.
it right.
Yeah, I want. Yeah, around like 3 or 4, maybe.
That'd be Permian Triassic. So that would have
Hmm.
been 3.
Yep.
Yeah. And for those of you who don't know, that's where most of land was plunged into basic chaos because some volcanoes erupted
Yeah, the
for
Deccan traps.
hundreds of thousands of years. And then, if any of you know, when volcanoes erupt, it releases CO2 into the atmosphere, which is not healthy for the atmosphere. I mean, you get things like acid rain and basically just poisonous air. So it killed off a lot of the population that way, and it killed 90% of all species, which is just mind like you can't even fathom how much that is. 'Cause if 90% of all species just went extinct today, I mean, you wouldn't. Then I guess how many of those are things like microorganisms and single cell organisms and insects?
I know insects took quite a big hit during
Because
the like. Things are getting pretty bad. Like when insects are starting to. When families of insects are starting to go extinct.
it's like the Waffle House scale, but for time.
Hmm.
It's real bad when Waffle House is closed. Mm. It's real bad when ants start dying off.
Mm.
Not that I would be against that nowadays, but
Oh
they
yeah,
are everywhere here. But I
that's cool.
mean,
We get a lot of them out here too.
I mean, so I guess it sounds pretty crazy to ask, but what's your favorite mass extinction?
Ooh, man. Well, they're all pretty bad. Oh, that's a good question. That's almost kind of like asking like what's your favorite kind of like natural disaster?
Yeah,
Because like they're all like they're pretty horrible like to the communities that they affect. Um,
they all
well,
suck pretty bad, so I don't really know here.
yeah. Well, I guess the one that interests me the most is probably the KPG mass extinction because it is kind of interesting in the sense that like something that I've always wondered about is was the asteroid was that did that basically was that the cause effect for the dinosaurs extinction or was it more like the cherry on top? Because like there's a few arguments about how dinosaurs were beginning to decline in diversity like right towards the end of the Cretaceous.
I
There was like a lot of like climate change going on at that time. There were like the Deccan traps, like these huge volcanic groups, like in India. Um, like seaways in North America that had been there for like a very, very long time were starting to shrink at this point. So, all of those dinosaurs that had evolved to live in those ecosystems, that habitat was changing very quickly in a very short amount of time. So what I want to know is if the asteroid had never struck, would dinosaurs have gone anyway?
that's actually a very good question. I mean, because I don't
Yeah.
I don't know if they would have gone extinct at the same. Well, I'm not even gonna say I don't know because it's definitely they wouldn't have gone extinct at the same rate because
Mm-hmm.
the asteroid hit and it was kind of just almost instantaneous that like a large portion of them died off. But I feel like they would have evolved themselves into a corner,
Mm.
if that makes sense. I mean, because you can kind of only get so advanced. I mean, like even biologically, I mean, you can only do so much. I mean, they're not going to start growing wings because that would be way too massive. You can't.
Mm.
I guess they could go back into the ocean like whales did. Who knows? I mean, be a large rise of aquatic creatures.
Mm. Well, it's funny because like I've done field work. I've worked for like a public dinosaur dig up in North Dakota for a few years, and we were digging in the Hell Creek Formation. And what's interesting in the Hell Creek Formation is that like in terms of diversity, there's only really one or two groups of dinosaurs that make up a particular group, right? So, like, if you were to go back like a few million years before the Hell Creek Formation ecosystem, there were like multiple different kinds of horned dinosaur. There were like multiple different kinds of tyrannosaurs and duck-billed dinosaurs. But once you get to Hell Creek, there's only like maybe one or two of them left.
You got like Edmontosaurus, Triceratops, and T Rex
Mm-hmm.
in that late stage, and you're like, we find the same three dinosaurs on repeat.
Right. And one of the thing is too is that quite frankly, like it's a very large geologic formation, but we do need to get more data, I think, from elsewhere in the world in order to kind of answer that question. What were like right towards the end, like what were dinosaurs that were living on other continents leading up to the KPG mass extinction event? Like what were they doing in terms of like diversity?
Because
And like is there like any patterns of decline that's going on over there?
usually when I like talk to people from the Hell Creek Formation, it's usually like, oh, what do you find the most? Edmontosaurus, Triceratops, occasionally T Rex teeth, and it's like it's the same three dinos. So it's kind of making you think: is there kind of something that maybe they stopped diversifying? Could it have possibly just been that that's where that specific species love to hang out? I mean,
And maybe there's some weird, preservation bias that's going on as well.
Definitely. I mean, because a lot of species, I feel like with preservation bias, like pterosaurs, they don't get that preservation bias. Their bones are so brittle, so hollow, because they have to fly.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, they can only take so much damage being grind away in this stone and water before they're just gone.
Yeah, yeah. Their fossils are tough to find. Like sometimes you get really lucky. Like if you're working in like a Lagerstätten, like you can find like some really beautifully preserved pterosaur fossils. But most of the time you're working with bits and pieces.
And I mean, I feel like there definitely is some like later into like a sauropod would be easier to preserve than like a Compsognathus.
Right,
Because
right.
a compy, you're probably just like, I feel like if I grab it too hard, it would break.
Mm.
It's like,
Yeah, usually like in the Hell Creek Formation, we have these vertebrate microsites that are really cool. And what you usually find, you're not going to find like necessarily whole skeletons of things, but stuff you probably will find are things of like, you'll find small theropod teeth and claws, and you'll find, maybe turtle shells and croc scoots and teeth.
we get a lot
That's
of,
kind of our preservation for like the really small stuff.
and I feel like it's not just based on size of the animal, shape of the animal, but also time of the animal. Because if you have something like, because sauropods just have really large, dense bones, so I get why they're easy to preserve. But other than like larger animals in that time, like Dilophosaurus and Ceratosaurus and Allosaurus and other sauropods, and you can see why it would be harder to preserve something smaller, which is why like you get things like Archaeopteryx. We found like 6 of them. And you're like, well, I can see why. I mean, when it was alive, it was basically like a chicken, and chicken bones will just explode if you grab them too hard.
Hmm.
I mean,
Well, yeah, it's it really just depends too on the geologic setting, what the preservation rates are like in this setting as well. Like, there's sites like in the Hell Creek where we have lots of really big things, but we're still trying to find a lot of the little things. But then you'll go to places like Mongolia or Germany where Archaeopteryx was found, and you find lots of small things, but maybe not so much big things.
because Mongolia has the fighting dinosaurs, who was
Yeah.
the Velociraptor and the Protoceratops. I was
Mm-hmm.
about to say Xenoceratops. I don't even know if that's his name.
Hmm.
But I mean, and they're relative to everything else, they're so pretty small. Not to be confused with being weak, but they were still pretty small. So,
Mm.
and then you have that Pangea was a thing. So tectonic plates are moving. Who knows what that's doing to preservation? Because I
Mm.
mean, if an animal dies a million years ago in one spot, the likelihood of the complete skeleton being fossilized, because you need very specific conditions for it to be fossilized.
Yeah, that's like winning the lottery.
On top of not being torn apart by scavengers, and then the tectonic plates not separating the bones. I mean, it's you kind of start to understand why we haven't really found any 100% complete skeletons.
Mm.
It definitely comes
Right.
close to it.
Well, sometimes we get really lucky. Like the area where like I used to work in, they had found I think it was back in the early 2000s. There was a dinosaur mummy that was found in this little town called Marmouth. And it was so well preserved that you could actually make out like the impression of skin between her toes. Like, it was so well preserved.
So, I mean, dinosaur skin in things like that are very rare. Like
You're never really gonna find like
almost like it's non-existent.
right. Well, they have found like soft tissue in dinosaur fossils before, but like as far as skin is concerned, like that is more of like the impression of skin, like what
Because
the
I mean,
skin, basically a stony copy of what the skin looked like.
on top of like, I mean, the likelihood that you're gonna find the actual skin of a dinosaur is not pretty much non-existent because it's been millions of years.
Mm-hmm.
So the likelihood of that is very low. But
Very low.
and if the conditions are perfectly right, you get that preservation bias where you can see the imprint. Because I know that's something that has done with Carnotaurus. I think we found Carnotaurus skin
Mm-hmm.
or skin imprint, which is just awesome because
Yeah.
Carnotaurus looks so cool, in my
Yeah,
opinion.
absolutely. Or like even like making out like the impression of like melanosomes and dinosaur feathers, like figuring out like what color they were, at least for some species, is super
Definitely.
neat.
Um, what is that guy's name? Michael. What's his last name? Benton. I think his name is Michael
Yeah.
Benton. He
Mm-hmm.
discovered the ginger dinosaur.
Yeah, Sinosauropteryx, I think.
Uh, and also, just like you look at the evolution of these things, they did kind of. It feels like they definitely in the early Cretaceous went crazy, and that's probably not the best thing because that probably did lead them into a corner. Because you look at something like Ceratosaurus, you got some of these other like Gigantosaurus, Giganotosaurus, Spinosaurus. They look very meticulous. They look very like well designed almost.
Mm.
Then you get to things like T Rex, and then you get like the 16 T Rex clones where they're like slightly different. It's almost like, did you run out of like things to adapt into? Did
Mm.
prey stop evolving?
Well, I think in the case of tyrannosaurs, I think they were kind of like filling in like that niche of a generalist predator. Whereas things like, Spinosaurus and Giganotosaurus and like things like Carnotaurus and the Abelisaurs, like they in a lot of ecosystems, those groups of animals like the Spinosaurids, the Carcharodontosaurids, the Abelisaurs, they were occupying different niches in their environment. Whereas a lot of tyrannosaurs, they were basically filling in like that generalist role
The
of a,
big predator.
yeah, like a large apex predator. There wasn't really a lot of there's some interesting niche partitioning with tyrannosaurs, like especially like during their growth. Like juveniles were definitely like hunting and eating things that were very different from what the adults were eating.
And you can definitely see like certain differences, like with Tarbosaurus, one of the most famous examples, where it's got the smaller, more slender head. It's got the weaker bite force. It's a bit smaller.
Mhm. They
And
had smaller arms too.
you could probably like infer that maybe the prey was smaller, so it didn't have to be as big. But like Edmontosaurus was, most media shows it very small, but they were massive. So you can see why T Rex was so big.
Mm.
I mean, and they were everywhere. That's the crazy part. I mean, they were everywhere, even in Alaska, which was something that I found very bizarre. Like, I think the most recent episode that's out.
Oh, hey, you still there?
Yeah, I'm still there. Can you hear me?
Trying to turn my like in the Hell Creek formation. There's not really a lot of diversity when it comes to medium-sized theropod dinosaurs. Like in tyrannosaur dominated ecosystems, there's like really large tyrannosaurs as apex predators, and then there's a big gap there's not really any kind of really medium-sized predators.
I
But then
feel
there's
like
also a lot of small stuff.
that could probably do to many things, and I could just be taking a wild guess. I feel like nothing else could really take that apex predator role from it,
Mm-hmm.
just primarily because it would kind of fend them off and keep them away from being that big predator role. And the medium predators are very close to the same size, so they would have been trying to have that similar role, and T Rex could have just hunted them too.
Mm. Yeah, I think juvenile tyrannosaurs are probably filling in like that medium-sized
Yeah.
niche.
Like, didn't scientists estimate that there's like 200 million different Tyrannosaurus that were possibly alive in North America?
Yeah, I did see that paper. I thought it was very interesting. I guess I'll say it like that.
And I mean, even with just like the different Tyrannosaurs, like a lot of them, whenever they diversified, they didn't really go far, if that makes sense.
Mm.
Like Tarbosaurus
Yeah.
was in Asia, but like Albertosaurus was still in North America. Alioramus
Hmm.
was in China, so they kind of stayed in a general area. Well, it's not Tyrannosaurus. Appalachiosaurus was also in North America. You get like Adasaurus, Gorgosaurus, where they tend to stay in either Asia or North America,
Mm.
but like usually China and North America, which is kind of still touching,
Right.
which is kind of makes you think. I mean, what was there really a point of diversifying?
Maybe. I mean, there could have been also different um, like blockades that also would have prevented tyrannosaurs maybe from spreading to other parts of the world.
Wasn't
Like
North
we do know there were tyrannosaurs living, like really early tyrannosaurs that were living in places like Europe and South America and possibly Australia. Um, but for some reason, they never really radiated in those parts of the world.
maybe something that just I mean, maybe something happened that made them kind of die off and not really take charge in those ecosystems. I mean,
Yeah, other predators had evolved to fill in those niches.
we're still missing most of it, so we might find something in those areas that's 2 times bigger than Tyrannosaurus, and we're like, well, this is what was keeping it from being the apex predator here.
Hmm. Yeah, that would be crazy.
That would be very bizarre. I mean, wasn't North America also split into like two parts or something?
Yeah, yeah. So during the late Cretaceous, there was a large inland sea called the Western Interior Seaway that had basically split the continent right down the middle. Um, and it was around for a good portion, like right towards the end of the Cretaceous. It was beginning to recede, but it was basically this big, large, shallow seaway that cut basically cut the continent in half, and each part of those continents had its own unique biota of dinosaurs.
And that could very well be part of it. I mean, because most of those other Tyrannosaurus are usually opposing in like other areas that T Rex really weren't. Or if they
Mm.
were, they're probably in different times and some
Hmm.
subsection of T Rex.
Yeah, there is evidence for like Tyrannosaurus, possibly like in the form of teeth, fossils of which have been found in like Utah and maybe even as like far south as Mexico.
Yeah, I mean, we found teeth there, but that doesn't necessarily mean that there was T Rex Tyrannosaurus there. It could have been something else
Right.
very similar to it, very because T Rex tend to stick in the Hell Creek kind of area, is what
Mm.
I've mainly seen.
Mm. Like we really just need to find more data.
That's basically the only answer for it. Just go out and find more. So,
Yeah.
and it did kind of seem like whenever they do go out, they tend to change.
Mm.
is what I've kind of observed because they have like Tyrannosaurus type dinosaur in Alaska, the
Mm-hmm.
Nanaquisaurus, the Nunuku. I need to start adding pronunciation to this.
Oh, you're good. They're pretty
Uh,
tough names.
that's part of the fun part, just making a fool of yourself trying to pronounce some names. I mean, but it's smaller than T Rex. It had a better nose, but it also lived in Alaska, so most of the prey that it had was relatively small.
Mm.
So it didn't have a need to be as big as T Rex. Also, it probably would have been a disadvantage because being big where it's frozen doesn't tend to help.
Yeah, right. Yeah, if you're living in a pretty hostile environment with not a lot of resources, it tends to help to be a little smaller.
And it usually prey animals, herbivores, things like that tend to be larger in those environments just based on like supplies. I mean, but like you can kind of see that T Rex very much so thrived in the Hell Creek Formation.
Mm.
So
Yeah, I mean, as far as like distribution, like I'm pretty sure we found Tyrannosaur like fossils of T Rex. We found from like Canada to Wyoming, the Dakotas, Montana, um, parts of Colorado. Like it had a fairly big range.
I mean, yeah, they were very dominant for the time that they were there. So I mean,
Dude, I'm so
it,
sorry. The recording.
so I mean, they probably. I mean, you look at humans. Whenever we thrive in an area, we kind of conquer out and take more.
Mhm.
So I mean, it, it's not an abstract idea for them to expand their territory.
Right. Yeah, and it makes me wonder because there is this theory right now about whether or not, I guess not a theory, more like we're still trying to figure out the ancestors of Tyrannosaurus Rex. Did they migrate from Asia and started occupying North America, or did Tyrannosaurus evolve in North America? And if Tyrannosaurus evolved from Asia and migrated over to North America, it makes me wonder, did they displace the native tyrannosaurs that lived here?
It very well could have been that. I mean, and I mean, it could have been as simple as there was Tyrannosaurs from Asia to North America, and then whenever it started to split off, they started to evolve differently.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they could have been in both places at the same time. They could have evolved in both places. They could have evolved in one. I mean,
Right, exactly. But yeah,
granted,
like I said, we need more data.
that's yeah. I mean, granted, I don't think they're forming any militias or militaries in Japan that way, but
Right.
they definitely are. They definitely took a bunch of territory that they claimed. So you said you used to go on digs.
Yeah, so I used to work for a commercial or public dinosaur dig called Hell Creek Fossils. They're a super cool like company based out in Marmarth, North Dakota. The owner, he's taking a break this year, but hopefully they're going to start up again next year. But basically, it is think of it like a safari lodge, but with dinosaurs. So, we provide free food, free housing, and then they drive you out into the Badlands and they put you to work digging up dinosaur fossils.
That yeah, that basically just sounds like what I want to do. So
Hey, dude, check it out. Pretty
that,
cool.
I mean, so when you were out there, what did you tend to find a lot of?
Ooh, well, dinosaurs, of course. There were lots of really cool dinosaur fossils that we found. Probably the most common thing that we found was Triceratops. There's a lot of Triceratops in the Hell Creek Formation. What's kind of funny is a little bit later on, when I started like volunteering there and working there, I gradually kind of shifted away from the dinosaurs, and I got really interested in things that we're living alongside the dinosaurs. So I got really into finding like fossil turtles and fossil crocs and fish and plants as well, and just figuring out what those organisms were doing during the late Cretaceous while dinosaurs were walking around. It's super, super cool.
Because I mean, it wasn't just dinosaurs. So I mean,
Oh,
and I
yeah.
feel like that's the biggest misconception, is that it was just like plants and dinosaurs, and that's what we got. And,
Right. Yeah, no, there's a whole lot more. Dinosaurs were just like a small part of their ecosystem.
and they definitely were the apex predators of that ecosystem, from what we know.
Yeah, they were the big
But
megafauna.
that doesn't mean that there weren't other things. I mean, there were still mammals and
Mm-hmm.
fish and sharks and big
Mm-hmm.
old whales and things that existed that were hunted. Because
Oh, yeah.
one of the most common images is like the megalodon or the mosasaur eating a whale, and you're like, well, why is it eating a modern whale? But it's like, it's not that bizarre of an idea that a very similar species would have existed and it fed on those. I mean,
Yeah, there were some pretty big Cretaceous sharks. You do find like brackish water shark fossils in the Hell Creek Formation, but they're like nowhere near as big as that.
yeah, no, you don't get whale hunting sharks there.
Oh yeah, no, those guys came way later.
Yeah, they were way later on the. You find them on the coast, is what I hear a lot
Right.
more.
Well, I was gonna say like Carolinas, like lots of megalodon teeth out there for sure.
Florida, and then like the southern part of South Carolina was shallow ocean, so you get a bunch of the smaller megalodon teeth because that's where their nursery kind of area was, and it's where all the small dolphins and fish and turtle swam. So that's where they fed before they went up into farther parts of South Carolina and North Carolina, which was deep ocean, which is where you find all the huge 6-inch megalodon teeth.
Ooh.
I mean, this is just a replica. I would love to find a real one, but
Right on. Well, dude, if you ever come to Arizona, we got lots of megalodon teeth
I
over
would.
at my store. Not out in Arizona. We do have shark teeth out here in Arizona, but they're very rare. But I do have lots of cool megalodon teeth at my store. If you ever want like a really cool one,
I would love to go out there one day. Gotta plan some visits. Got a lot of places to travel to, but I mean, finding those in those shallow oceans is very rare because that means that it was like a mother megalodon that was coming to give birth and then it shed a tooth.
Yeah, that's super crazy to think about.
And find them in those deep ocean areas are kind of like, well, that's where they all were, but so it's not common, but it's not uncommon.
Yeah, every once in a while you get really lucky, right?
Yep. I mean, that's it's basically like striking gold, except for you don't get as rich.
Yeah, yeah, fossil rich.
Yeah, you're rich with knowledge.
Mm.
So I mean, so what was like the rarest thing you found?
Rarest thing I found. That's a good question. Probably the rarest thing that I ever found. It was not this year, but last year. We had gone out prospecting, and I had found like a theropod claw, which was really small, which was super cool, and we think that it may have been a dromaeosaur claw. That's probably the rarest thing I found. But a lot of the guests that come out with us, we usually find tyrannosaur teeth like once a week. So like one kid found like a 6 1/4, like I think it was like a 6 1/4 inch tooth from a Tyrannosaurus.
Wow.
That was like one of the craziest things that I had ever seen, like being taken out of the field from there. But yeah, you find all sorts of really crazy stuff.
So I mean, uh, out in the Hell Creek Formation, what I've heard is you come across like not T-Rex as a whole as common, but the teeth are a bit more common than.
Yeah, Tyrannosaur teeth are fairly common. Like you find them, like we would typically find them maybe once or twice a week. Triceratops teeth are pretty common. We find lots of those. Same with Edmontosaurus. We find lots of hadrosaur teeth.
We tend to shed those.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I can only imagine finding one of those things because I haven't done that yet.
Mm.
Make that very clear to everyone listening. It's a yet. And when I do, y'all will see about it. But I mean, and the mammals after it. I mean, because dinosaurs went, because that mass extinction, what it seems like is it kind of seemed like everything died off, but most of it died off. I mean, it was like 70% of life, give or take.
Yeah, basically, like I've
Like
heard it
70% of life.
explained that everything that was over 55 pounds died out.
I mean, a vast majority of life died out.
Yeah.
Not even that. It wasn't a vast majority. It was just a majority of it.
Mm-hmm.
But that also didn't stop things from re-evolving. It's why we had megafauna and humans, us. We're in, like the example of that. That not everything died off because if it did, then we wouldn't be here.
It happened very quickly. Like they found Paleocene deposits of like early mammals that made it through the KPG, and like they had already gotten, like, it was maybe less than 600,000 years after the asteroid strike, and they were already larger than they'd ever been during the Mesozoic.
That's kind of crazy to think about. They because dinosaurs seem to take forever to come into existence.
Mm.
Because I mean, you had all the weird lizards and things before the dinosaurs and the Permian and the early Triassic before the dinosaurs really came in. And then they started to come in the Triassic. Then they really started to branch out into the Jurassic, and then eventually kind of finishing up that cycle in the Cretaceous, which was a huge chunk of time that it took them to come into existence. But like large mammals, they really they're like, this is my chance, let's go.
Yeah. Yeah,
They,
that's
they,
kind of something we share with dinosaurs, like that evolutionary path. Because we, like mammals, like basically got really large very quickly after the dinosaurs went extinct. And dinosaurs, they, like, after the Triassic Jurassic mass extinction that wiped out all the weird non-dinosaur archosaur reptiles and pterosaurs and things like that, um, they really quickly filled in those niches as well, like kind of taking over from those reptiles. So they're kind of underdogs in a way, which is kind of cool. Evolutionary underdogs.
that definitely that could have been part of that ending of evolutionary track in the Cretaceous period for the dinosaurs.
Mm-hmm.
Since all those other weird animals and things went extinct, the dinosaurs had to kind of fill those roles. And then once they evolved to fill the roles, they could also take on their old role while having this new role. And they kind of just blend together into one super creature, obviously. But I mean, that you can kind of see how it kind of stopped going.
Yeah, like right towards the end of the Cretaceous, do you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah, because like I do think a lot about that sometimes. Like kind of how we were talking about before, like, if the asteroid had never struck, like would dinosaurs still be around? Because it did kind of look like they were beginning to lose diversity, like right towards the very end, at least in North America.
I mean, I haven't really looked a lot at the other creatures in the time scale like that, but it did seem like they were losing a lot of diversity because, like we're talking with the Hell Creek Formation, you get like 3 major animals, and then you like occasionally find something else.
Right.
Like I was talking to one dude, the dinosaur cowboy. So he found like a Stygimoloch skull, which is like, whoa, that or Draco Rex, one of them. Which is like, whoa, that's really crazy and very unique. And then they couldn't find like anything like that really once. And then they're like, oh, yeah, like a Montosaurus and Triceratops and Tyrannosaurus, and then they found like one of the ankylosaurids. Like his kids found like the neck plate fused of like just that for one of them.
That's really cool.
I mean, it's still cool, but it's like how much diversity really was there?
Mm,
You find these occasional fossils.
right.
So
Yeah, the fossils themselves are really common, but a lot of it is just like two or three kinds of dinosaur. Like you're not really finding too much else.
yeah, so it's kind of like did the dinosaurs take over too much? Could that have been their downfall?
It's hard to
Well,
say.
outside of the giant murder rock that slammed into the earth, but
Right.
mm, yeah, I think about it like a stress meter. The more you push on someone, the more stress they get. The more stress they get, the less they can do because they get anxious and so
Right.
stressed out. But like, could that have been the same for dinosaurs? They took on too many roles at once. All
Mm.
these other weird dinosaur or not dinosaurs, but smaller creatures and mammals and things kind of died out or left or went other places. So
Hmm.
they kind of took on too many roles to where they couldn't like
Yeah. Yeah.
focus
I
on.
wonder. I wonder if it maybe it was a series of circumstances that were all happening all at the same time with major climate change, volcanism, and then like right towards the end that asteroid. Maybe that was the cherry on top.
It was
Maybe
definitely
not.
the final stone in the grave for
Yeah.
a
I know
little
some
bit.
paleontologists that think that maybe that possibly dinosaurs had maybe gone extinct at least on the mainland before the asteroid struck. That I'm kind of I don't know so
That's a
much about
little.
that
I don't really know about that. I mean,
because we found fossils of dinosaurs like leading right up until the KPG boundary, like right up to that iridium layer.
also, I mean, could it have been that all those smaller areas in the Hell Creek Formation? Because you look at like Asia, and at that time, it was kind of the opposite side of the globe.
Mm-hmm.
That's whenever it started to split. Pangea started to split and actually form what the modern world started to look like. So could it be again that preservation bias and just all the smaller dinosaurs were like just obliterated by the giant rock that slammed into the earth like very close to them?
Mm. Well, I I just think that well, I think more people are starting to look now, and I think in the next couple of years, I think we're going to have a much clearer picture of what was going on, like right towards the end.
Definitely, because
Yeah.
it could be preservation bias. It could be that they had just stopped diversifying. It could be so many numerous different little niche details that we're just missing. It could be a lot of things,
Mm.
and and like you keep saying, I mean, we just need to find more data.
Yeah.
It's about as simple as that. And I mean, outside of like the dinosaurs, past the dinosaurs, we kind of know more than like about the megafauna and all that because like humans were really a thing. We started to become
Mm.
a thing, so we could start to kind of document it, start to look more about it because we find like woolly mammoth tusk with things like carved in it. So
Yeah.
you're like, okay, well, we can kind of understand what they sounded like. They look very similar to modern animals. You start to see these very similar looking animals in modern day, and you can definitely see that. I mean, we are in the sixth mass extinction, from what
Yeah.
science have said, is where all that megafauna was hunted and then evolved out of into extinction. So,
Mm. Yeah, we are the asteroid now.
yeah, we're lack of better terms, we are the asteroid now. Which is a little depressing, but at the same time, you kind of can see.
Oh yeah, I think what matters now is what steps we do take now in order to prevent the loss of future biodiversity.
Definitely. So I mean, there has definitely been a lot of megafauna that is just gone,
Mm,
which is
yeah,
also crazy to think about. Like, how many species of megafauna were there that were just killed off and didn't really get the chance to evolve?
yeah. Like I mean, like here in North America, like during the Pleistocene, like we had like more diversity of large megafauna than like all of Africa today.
It's really crazy to think about. I mean,
Yeah.
we had like bears and mammoths. We even had tigers and lions. We had like
Hmm.
panthers too. I mean, we don't have lions today. You have
Yeah,
like,
North America.
I mean, you have like mountain lions, but are they really like lions or are they like panthers?
Not really. They're kind of their own thing.
Yeah, I mean, but we used to have like a lion that was in Africa that just doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah. I
It's
think
really cool.
my favorite Ice Age megafauna. Are you familiar with like glyptodonts?
Is that like the giant sloth, or
Uh,
is
they're the giant sloths are super cool. But glyptodonts, they were like giant relatives of armadillo that were the size of small
oh
cars.
yeah the weird thing that looks like it's out of a video game where it has the
Yeah.
giant shell and the big tail.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, some of them had like weird little club tails.
Yeah,
Yeah, we found their fossils here in Arizona. But they like during when Central America formed, they had evolved in South America, but they began to move up into North America. And by the Pleistocene, they had basically occupied the southern United States. They're super cool, man.
they they look they look very abstract.
Right?
I mean, they almost look unreal. If that,
Right.
but like you also look at like an armadillo, and you're like, oh well, nah, it's not that. Because like some of these modern animals like are just bizarre still. I mean, a lot of species are still very bizarre to look at. Like you look at like a walrus, you're like, what is that? What
Mm,
what are we doing here? Like, and then you see like megafauna like Glyptodon, you're like, what is that thing?
yeah. Hey, they were doing something right. They were around for a good while.
I mean, one of my favorite just fossil finds from that what would that be, Eocene era would
Oh,
have been
for glyptodonts or for megafauna, like
yeah, in general. I mean,
like I um glyptodonts aren't, I don't think, go that far. They were around for a little while. Off the top of my head, I don't know off the top. Dinosaurs are a little bit more my thing.
definitely same here, but I might do a few mammals in December for all of you listening, just because it gets cold and the ice age was cold. So
Yeah, that's perfect.
I mean, what was that? No, that's that same thing. We were in the Pleistocene.
Hmm.
Eocene,
Pliocene, Pleistocene.
yeah, Pleistocene. Eocene was where the megafauna was looking at.
Hmm. We have some fossils from the Eocene at my store. Me and the owner, we went up to the Green River Formation over in Kemamere, Wyoming, and there are these large limestone quarries that you can go out and you can split these big slabs of limestone, and every once in a while you get really lucky and you find a fossil fish.
Mhm.
But people find like palm trees, they find whole crocs, turtles, mammals, birds, all sorts of really cool stuff.
Because you got all the famous mammals. You got like mammoth and a
Hmm.
little bit less known, but like mastodon and
Yeah, mastodons are cool.
yeah, like the big old ground sloths and
Hmm.
like smilodon and things like that. But
Yeah, we have a fully articulated skeleton of Smilodon. like in our store. Their sabers are crazy. Like they could get up to around like 11 inches in length. Like they're
these are some blank on the word, replicas. I don't know why that was so hard to remember. These are some just replica ones, but I mean,
well, those are super cool.
they're still massive. I mean, and
are those from fossil crates?
yes, they are.
Oh, very cool. I just did an interview with Brian
Yeah.
a little while ago.
I saw their post where you went and talked to them, and I was like, hey,
I was about to talk to that guy.
I'm talking to him. That'd be cool.
Yeah, Brian's an awesome dude.
Dude, he's very nice. I mean, I love talking to him.
Yeah.
I'm trying to work out another interview with him, trying to get something in there.
All right.
But like one of my favorite, I don't know if they're really classified as megafauna, but definitely is Smilodon.
Mm-hmm.
Just because, I mean, they're one of those. They were actually one of the first dinosaurs that ever showed like sport hunting.
Mm.
They're not dinosaurs, but creatures. I said dinosaurs. They're not even. But like humans used to sport hunt them, which is like bizarre to think about that you would do that. But then you also look at like poachers in Africa, so you're like, it's not that far.
That's interesting. I didn't know there was any kill sites for Smilodon. That's pretty interesting.
Well, I mean, now I'm thinking about it, I would hate to have to fight one because you would have fought a giant stick with a pointy rock at the end. It's like, no thanks.
I mean, it would make sense. I mean, we would have met them. Like there were people here in North America like well before 10,000 years ago.
Who knows? It could have been some sort of rite of passage to hunt one of these giant predators. Because we definitely found like kill sites for things like mammoths and
like here in the Southwest, those are like the Clovis points that are usually associated with like mammoth remains. Like those, like we do find Clovis stuff out here, which is really cool.
We've got some Clovis points over here too.
Ooh,
we got one that I went to the State Museum, and this is like my 6th time calling them out. So please answer your email. I hope they're watching. They talked about a site called, I'm blanking on it, Camelot. Ooh. So they were digging and digging. They'd find small little fossils, but they were going to build something over it. I don't remember what they were going to build, but that's not important. But they were finding like small fossils. And like, this isn't enough to do anything to like keep it up. And then towards the end, they found like 2 Smilodon skulls or something.
Wow.
Which is, somebody was just like, hey guys, come over here. You should look at this. Smilodon skull. And I remember them pulling the little drawer thing that they had. They pulled it open, and it's just like a whole Smilodon skull. Plus like the fangs and the other one just like right there. I'm like, just because you see it and you're just like in such awe that you can't express yourself properly, and it's just, it gives you chills because you're like, you see these bones and you're like, what were these things like in real life?
Yeah, those are another great gateway into science.
That's I mean that's why I'm really into dinosaurs, because we don't know enough about them. There's so much missing that you just want to find what it is.
Right, exactly. Yeah, that's like one of the big appeals about dinosaurs. Like John Horner said that, people like dinosaurs because they're big, they're interesting, and they're extinct. I think that's like a really good way to summarize how people feel about dinosaurs.
That's basically right on the money.
Yeah.
I mean, because I really got into dinosaurs, and it's probably the same reason for like 600,000 different people. Was Jurassic Park was really the thing that got me introduced to dinosaurs. Because I mean, before Jurassic Park, of course, I knew like the niche Tyrannosaurus and like Triceratops and Velociraptor, but actually watching that movie, and you can. So we live in a day, like the age where it's outdated now.
Yeah.
And I kind of hate that everybody rips on it for it being, that they're outdated. But for the time that it was around, it was very like scientifically accurate.
Mm.
Other,
Yeah, and I
other
think
than Velociraptor,
yeah.
Utah Raptor was actually found after the movie, and they were like, "That we'll use that as our excuse." But I mean, you kind of get to see some action of what these creatures look like, and you can definitely see that was for a Hollywood movie.
Right.
So you still see that they're kind of monstrous instead of more just normal animal like.
Yeah.
But you still get to see that action of them and that they're still there and
Mhm.
introduce me into it. And I'm like, these things look really cool. I want to learn more about them. And then I just kept diving into it and
Mhm.
I'm here now. So
Yeah, I think that was like the same case for a lot of people. Like I do have mixed feelings about those movies because like I think now like with the Jurassic World movies and all the sequels that have come out, I think it's kind of been overplayed like a little bit.
a little bit, definitely.
But like I mean the first movie, like that was really society's first time of looking at dinosaurs in a way that no one like they hadn't really seen before. Because in previous, like a lot of like early stop motion dinosaur movies, you know, where people dressed up in dinosaur suits, you know, they were always like depicted as being slow, clumbering, not very interesting animals.
It
But
was the first major time that the more modernized dinosaur.
yeah,
Because
like
before
they
that,
made dinosaurs exciting again.
yeah, I actually got one right here for some really odd reason. You get these like old looking. This is an old school, okay, but you get like one of these older ones where the tail drags on the ground, the spine's more upright.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those very old dinosaur looks, but you get to the more modern age where I need to get a feathered T Rex now
Oh.
to finish the cycle. But the spine and the tail's more diagonal. You get that it stood more horizontal to the ground. You, and that's how they portrayed them. They portrayed them
Mm-hmm.
in that manner. I mean, which was new to the time, basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
Hopefully, in the next generation of dinosaur toys, they're going to start having lips.
lips and feathers. I mean,
Yeah, lips and feathers.
because they kind of did that in the newest Jurassic World movie, where they kind of put feathers on the T Rex.
Yeah,
It looked a bit more scientifically accurate, but
a little bit.
from a movie standpoint, don't get me wrong, they are amazing movies.
Mm-hmm.
Like, but from like a science standpoint, you're like, eh.
Yeah.
Would a T Rex really hunt a human? Would it actively pursue and hunt a human?
Well, I don't know. I mean,
You look at it and you're like, the payoff for like the nutrition that a giant animal like that would need. Would it really be worth burning that much energy for
yeah, that's a
this?
fair point.
It's
I
like
think
burning a mile to eat a goldfish.
the juvenile tyrannosaurs,
Oh yeah, no, definitely.
that those guys, on the other hand, that might be a
They would
little bit
hunt
more
me.
scary. Because like you might be able to outrun like an adult tyrannosaurus, but like the juvenile tyrannosaurs, they had like insanely long legs,
Ooh,
and
yeah.
they were built for running things down.
They were lighter too. So
Yes. So yeah, you'd want to watch out for the teenage T Rexes in Jurassic Park.
that's the and they always show people getting all close up with the herbivores and Alan Grant laying on the giant or Triceratops. But that's second
Mm,
The Lost World where they started messing with the Stegosaurus and they went crazy. I'm like, that's pretty accurate.
yeah, I
That's
mean
what I
that's
feel like would happen. Stegosaurus would go crazy that you're messing with their child and start
yeah,
basically
that's a really good point. Like oftentimes in an environment, it's the really big herbivores that are actually really dangerous.
like they. One of my least favorite things that they always do is they show Brachiosaurus and Apatosaurus and Diplodocus as these gentle, docile, giant creatures, and I'm sure for a lot of them, they probably were for most of the time. That they were, uh, as long as you didn't mess with them and actively try to make them mad, they were probably very gentle and docile. But
Mm,
you get these predators that kind of start to like hunt around them, and you're like, that thing would tear down a forest.
mm.
It would
Yeah,
get like a
they were
herd.
probably pretty dangerous when they wanted to be.
Because I mean, in the movie, they're like, a giant cow that got hunted, but in real life, they're like, I'm a giant animal. I'm gonna kill some apex predators real quick.
Yeah,
Sauropods were not to be trifled with at all.
right.
I mean, I'm sure there are fossil sites where we find like a giant sauropod fighting like Allosaurus or something. It killed like 4 of them before it was brought down or something, and you're like, okay, I wasn't expecting that. I mean, I can only imagine because to like the force to bring down a sauropod would be that's like pushing over a tree right there.
Yeah, I suspect that like at a certain age and like a certain size, like those dinosaurs probably wouldn't have to worry too much about anything, like
Mm-mm.
predator wise. What is really interesting though, that kind of reminds me of something, is that there was like a really cool study that came out a little while ago about how like wherever we find like sauropods in an ecosystem, there seems
Oop.
theropod diversity. Yeah, there's this really interesting correlation between wherever we find sauropods in any given ecosystem, we usually find like a high diversity of theropods as well. Like it seems almost like it as if sauropods were kind of like these ecosystem engineers that were able to support like a wide variety of different theropods.
Well, I mean, I guess since they were so massive, I mean, if the theropods ate enough, they would be able to go, so other theropods would be able to get larger and feed on them. I mean,
Right. And I
they
mean, we
wouldn't have to
found
fight.
like nesting grounds in places like Argentina, like these huge nest sites where these sauropods would congregate and lay hundreds of eggs. And I mean, if it was anything like how sea turtles hatch from their eggs today and make the mad dash to the ocean, like a little army of baby sauropods could support who knows how many different theropod species as they grew.
They probably wouldn't focus on fighting each other if there's all these little babies. I mean, they would focus on eating.
Right, exactly.
So I mean,
But yeah, it's interesting.
that correlation is definitely there because I feel like there was because I mean they went into I mean they were kind of there since the Jurassic
Oh yeah. Yeah,
and
they
they
were
didn't
some of the earliest. That the sauropod group is one of the oldest dinosaur groups. Like they go all the way back to the Triassic.
and if you think that like if you think about like alligators and things, they don't ever really stop growing.
Mm, right.
Imagine like sauropods. I mean,
Yeah. Like
they don't-
probably one of the most common questions like I get at my store is like, what was the biggest dinosaur? And I answer that, well, the answer to that is that we may not have found it yet. It seems like no matter like how many different species we find, it seems that there's like a new species like Argentinosaurus that kind of caps off how large they can get.
Argentinosaurus tends to be the generalization for the largest
Right.
that I've seen, but who knows? There could have been something larger. I kind of doubt it because I feel like most of the large sauropods have been kind of discovered, unless there's one in like the middle of the Amazon or somewhere.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, we just got to find their fossils.
that's another thing. The whole cryptozoology, and then it's just a normal dinosaur.
Huh.
It's like,
Right. I don't know about that one.
it doesn't really seem like it's up there with Bigfoot, but all right.
Kind of along the same vein, like we just did a video on our Instagram page about like the correlation between like dinosaurs and dragons. and how, like, some people think that living dinosaurs somehow inspired the myth of dragons. Like, it's not really the case. Like, there were like fossils of ancient animals that probably did help spread that like story. But you can kind of clearly see, like we were talking about, there's this town in Klagenfurt in Austria that had like a supposed dragon skull, that the dragon had been like terrorizing the town folk during the Middle Ages. But then paleontologists came in and actually used comparative anatomy to figure out that, oh, wait a minute, this is like the skull of a woolly rhinoceros that went extinct 14,000 years ago.
Like the whole Cyclops thing with Greece, and it just turned out that, like, you look at like a mastodon or a mammoth skull. I mean,
right? Yeah, it looks like a giant person with one eye.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of room for error there. I mean, if I found a T-Rex skull and I didn't know what a T-Rex was, I would assume that A, it's probably still alive, because you find the bones and without thinking, you're probably like, this kind of animal is still around somewhere. And B, it's a giant monster that's probably going to try to eat me.
Right. And not to mention, like, people out of Europe and Asia that were traveling to places like Africa and like the Indonesian islands, seeing crocodiles and Komodo dragons. Like, they would like come back to their communities and be like, oh my gosh, like there are these giant reptiles that are,
oh god, yeah,
and then it's like a big game of telephone. Like, oh well, actually they flew. Some of them like could breathe fire.
I mean, yeah, there's probably a lot of tall tale there. I don't know what telltale is, but tall tale there that's very just like it's been orally told so much that eventually it's just changed so vastly that, like, for all we know, yeah, somebody saw like a crocodile and they're like, and now we're like, giant fire breathing reptile. But every culture on Earth kind of having a significant dragon like creature kind of leads me to believe that maybe not paleontology in the traditional sense was kind of a thing, but that they were finding these fossils, or they were seeing some kind of animal that resembled it.
Right.
But, I mean, who knows? I mean, another thing that I feel gets majorly overlooked is like the what'd you call it? The signs of like snakes in mythology. But you also look back at it and you have things like Titanoboa, and you find their remains, or you have from the ancient ancestors who a couple of them came across a Titanoboa and it just like killed 4 or 5 dudes, and they're just like, we're not going there again.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, that would be crazy, but I do feel like a lot of it has to do, like, kind of like how we were talking before about like this big game of telephone, where like, oh well, this 25-foot long snake, it's still a big snake, but 25 feet turns into 30 feet and then 40 feet and stuff like that.
I mean, because Titanoboa was like massive.
Yeah, it was longer than Tyrannosaurus. It was like 43 feet.
So I mean, like, imagine being a primitive person. You have no idea what's going on, and you came across this thing in a swamp, and it just swallowed like 8 or 9 of your buddies, and you're just like, I'm just gonna leave.
Yeah.
I'm going
Yeah,
back.
we would probably make like a whole mythology around that animal.
And I feel like there is definitely some kind of natural predation between snakes and monkeys or something. Because I mean, it's very prominent in all mythology that snakes are this evil, kind of deceptive creature that try to destroy humanity or something.
It's something to be afraid of.
And you can always kind of see that commonality, and you can also see that snakes are like everywhere.
Right. Yeah, there's this interesting study. I think it was called the snake primate detection hypothesis, where these researchers found that like primates can recognize snakes much faster than any other group of animals.
That's, huh.
Like the patterns that they have on their bodies, like they would show like these faded images to different animal subjects in a lab setting, and primates were always able to figure out like what kind of animal it was.
There is definitely some kind of natural predation there between snakes and monkeys
Yeah,
or
carries
primates.
on in us.
And yeah, I mean, you can see it like,
Yeah, my mom's terrified of snakes.
yeah, I mean, it's like a fear that we have. I mean, one of the most famous examples is like the Midgard serpent from Norse mythology. I mean, it's going to
Mhm.
crush the earth. I mean, that's kind of like up there. You're like, what?
Yeah.
You can see it in like Christian mythology. I'm sure there's something in other mythologies. I'm not really that versatile on that.
Yeah, no, but
Like,
I've noticed that too, like how snakes, they always seem to like pop up in the human imagination. They always kind of seem to find like their way in like different mythoses.
and they're always some kind of evil, deceptive being,
Mm,
and you can kind of see it. They're cold-blooded reptile
right.
murder things. Oh God, I hate seeing those people, and they're like, oh, I wake up every day and my pet python is stretched out right next to me. He loves me so much. Like, no, that thing's
Oh
gonna
man,
eat you.
I can't talk too much. I have two pets, actually three snakes in my home. Actually, my my fiance, she works at a reptile shop right next door to where I work,
Mm.
and we always joke around. She works with the live reptiles. I work with the dead ones. But yeah, we have a 5 foot long boa constrictor, um, a
Oh
three
God.
foot long carpet python, and a really cute little hognose snake.
Yeah,
Yeah,
if
he's
you
got a
wake
cute
up
little
and
nose.
it's you, it's time to put it back in the cage.
Yeah, right.
I mean, that would like freak me out. It's like
Yeah.
you wake up and your snake's just sizing you up, and you're like,
Oh yeah. I think that's just like I think that's just like some kind of urban myth. I think about the whole sizing you up thing.
eh.
Um, but no, they're super personable. I mean, they're not like I tell people that like they're not ever really going to like love you like the same way that like you love them, or like how a dog
You
like would
can't
love
train
you.
them.
Yeah,
The
like they're
reptile
not
brain is not trainable.
right.
That
But
makes
you
sense.
know, if you can afford to take care of them in the right setting, like they make phenomenal pets.
Yeah, I mean, you can't really like, you can't be like, go in a coil. It's not gonna listen to you. I mean,
Yeah, no, not really.
they don't really have that. The lizard brain is kind of that. I don't want to say dumb, but it's not very cognitive thinking, if that makes sense.
Mm. No, I think that's fair.
It's got the bare bones survival instinct. That's about
Mm.
it.
No, I think
It's
I
like,
think that's fair, 100%.
and I mean, you can see that in the brain cases of some dinosaurs. I mean, Stegosaurus is one of the most famous ones where it's got that like tiny brain case, and everybody's like, "Oh, Stegosaurus is dumb." And it's like,
Yeah.
well, maybe Stegosaurus is more reptilian.
Right. And
You
like
know,
it's kind of unfair to like judge the intelligence of animals by like the size of their brain, cuz
no,
like alligators, right? Like alligators have like a relatively small brain, but like they're very intelligent animals. Like they have a fantastic memory. Like the part of their brain that analyzes like memory is really large. And then like they've also like they have a very complex social structure as well, like way more complex than you would think in a reptile. And they're one of the few reptiles that have been observed using tools. Like they what they'll do is during the breeding season or nesting season for certain bird species, these birds need like wood and sticks to help build their nests, and alligators have been observed like gathering these sticks and kind of placing them near like the front of their snout. So when these birds dive down to like grab these sticks, the alligators like jump up and they grab them.
oh wow.
Yeah, yeah, super intelligent animals.
I, I mean, Also,
Who
I
knows
mean,
what dinosaurs were doing?
if you do it based on like intelligence level or like IQ, kind of, I mean, of course, you're going to see that humans are smarter than like everything.
Mm-hmm.
But if you do it based on like brain to body ratio, you get like small birds are like vastly more intelligent than humans because
Right.
they have such a small body and their brain is larger. So, I mean, who knows? I mean, maybe some of these dinosaurs didn't need that large of a brain. Maybe some did. I mean,
Yeah. No,
you
I think
definitely
that's a
have
fair
things like
statement to make.
you definitely had things like Troodon where they had that very large brain case. So you're like, oh, maybe it's a higher intelligent creature, and it had other advanced senses. Who knows? I mean, we have something like a sauropod where you're like, well, it's a massive beast. Who really knows how much brain power it really needs?
Right. Yeah, no, that's a good point. Like, animals really only need to be as smart as their environment allows, I think is a good way to
I mean,
put it.
if you stick an elephant in a city, I'm sure after a while it's going to get like slightly more adapt to a city than, or, well, probably. I wouldn't know. I've
Right.
never
Well,
seen an elephant in a city, so.
yeah. Like things
But
like elephants and octopuses, like for those guys, they've kind of like hit like these plateaus in their evolution where like, they can't really harness fire. Like octopuses, for example, like they're super intelligent, but they can't really make a fire under the ocean or really
yeah,
industrialize or anything like that.
octopi using tools. Oh
Mm.
god, have you
Oh yeah, they already do. They already do use
I
tools.
saw one thing where someone's like, "Oh, octopi using tools now. Let's not throw away any guns. It's going to end bad." I mean, because I mean, humans on a broad scale are really intelligent, and that
Mm-hmm.
is kind of our trade-off. Is that instead of going for that brute strength like our monkey ancestor or whatever, I mean, we went more for intelligence. I mean,
Mm.
look at like a gorilla and a human. Like a human any day of the week could probably beat a gorilla at chess.
Mm-hmm.
But
Maybe.
like,
I mean, there's some dumb people out there.
oh well. I mean, yeah, but I would say like the average human could probably beat the average gorilla at chess. I'll give you 4 out of 5 times.
Mm.
But like arm wrestling, I'll give you like 0.0000000000001% chance of winning. I mean, I like it is there is definitely evolutionary trade off. Like that is definitely a thing.
Mm.
So like you look at like T Rex, one of the most famous examples. Like why does it have such tiny arms? Well,
Right.
look at its head. It had an amazing bite force. It relied
Yeah.
heavily on its bite force for things. So that means the bones probably had to be denser, heavier. That probably mean that had to have more muscle in the face and the head, which would mean that the head would weigh more, which would mean that the tail would have to be longer and heavier to balance it out. But if
Mm-hmm.
it had arms, then the front half would be too heavy and it would fall on its face.
Yeah.
So the trade-off
Absolutely.
was that it got smaller arms.
But I
And
mean, it seemed to have worked out for them, you know. And that trait has popped up like a couple of times in like different lineages of large theropods, like the Carcharodontosaurids, like those guys we just found out, like they convergently evolved smaller arms as they started getting bigger and bigger heads. The Abelisaurs are like a great example too. Like they had those little stumpy arms as well.
which is why Carnotaurus really surprised me because I mean, in general, their bite force is relatively like 40 times stronger than any human, but like on the scale of dinosaurs, they had a fairly weak bite force,
Mm,
which is why it like confused me that their arms are so tiny. Because
mm.
so I'm thinking maybe it had something to do with the horns, or
Yeah, maybe they were eating different things in their environment from things like tyrannosaurs.
I mean, I mean it's Carnotaurus before or after Tyrannosaurus?
I want to say a little bit before.
It was before. They were both late Cretaceous creatures.
Mm.
Or early Cretaceous, sorry. Uh, early to late. T-Rex and carries on. Carnotaurus was 100 million years ago, and T-Rex was 65 to 70, probably more, million years ago. So relatively same period. So who knows? Maybe Carnotaurus is like an offshoot, weird other species of Tyrannosaurus.
Whoa, that would be crazy.
I mean, who knows? Maybe its environment, some kind of common ancestors split off, and one evolved to be the giant T-Rex, and the other one a bit smaller Carnotaurus. I mean, that would be very bizarre and very different because they kind of have separate what would it be, families, genus.
Yeah, yeah. Like the Tyrannosaurs, they were kind of like doing their own thing, whereas like Carnotaurus and the other Abelisaurs, like they were well, Tyrannosaurs were occupying the northern hemisphere. The Abelisaurs, like Carnotaurus, those guys were typically inhabiting like the southern hemisphere.
A lot
So
more
like South America, which is like a great place to find those guys. Africa, India as well, which was like an island continent during the late Cretaceous. They found them on Madagascar, Europe.
Argentina seems to be a good place for Carnotaurus. So
yeah, Argentina just seems to be a good place to find dinosaurs in general. Like they
apparently
find so many crazy fossils.
Yeah, the largest primary land carnivore with the largest known herbivore as of right now. So, I mean, there's definitely something going on down there. I mean,
yeah. Did you hear about that really cool new armored dinosaur that they found there in Argentina?
Was it the one that had that weird tail that looked like the Aztec weapon?
That one may have been found in Peru, but the one I'm talking about, they called it Jacopil, and it's really weird. It was bipedal, and it looked like maybe something that should have been from like the early Jurassic.
Oh,
but it's super cool. It's a really cool species of dinosaur that like we're only just starting to like figure more about. It's fairly small too.
That thing looks really different.
Yeah, isn't that crazy?
Let me actually pull it up. Yeah, I mean, right next to Dilophosaurus apparently, because something. Yeah, this thing looks really different.
Yeah.
It looks like a cross between one of those horned dragons and like a tiny like theropod. That's weird.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? That's like one of my favorite new dinosaurs that they found.
I spelled it wrong now. It's with a K, huh? I mean, those are that's a very interesting dinosaur. I mean, and it seems to live in some kind of desert environment. So I feel like Argentina went through some kind of change, some kind of nutrients change, or it was definitely two biomes, two or more biomes, because part of it seems to be some kind of desert, and another part of it has to be some kind of forest if it had sauropods.
Yeah, I don't know too much. I should learn more, but I don't know too much about like Mesozoic South America as much as I should. But it is interesting, and I want to know too, like, because like I'm based here in the American Southwest, and we had dinosaurs here, and you know they've been finding some like really cool stuff in Mexico and things that are leading into South America. Like they found like a dinocheirid in Mexico.
Oh, really?
Like I wonder like how far some of these like North American dinosaur groups like made it down into like more South America.
And, yeah, I mean, and how far some of the South American creatures made it north? Because, I mean, what is it? Therizinosaurus?
Mm-hmm.
They found like tracks of them in like Alaska.
Yeah.
So and they were from like their like remains are found in Mongolia.
Yeah.
Have been found in Mongolia.
My neighboring state, New Mexico, they found a therizinosaur called Nothronychus.
Wow.
That's super cool. It's a lot smaller than like Therizinosaurus, but it's one of the best examples of like a North American Therizinosaur that we've ever found. Like probably like the best.
But it makes you think, like, how far south did those guys get?
Yeah, right?
In
We don't know yet.
if they're coming from Asia,
Mm-hmm.
that means that there was definitely some kind of connection. So, what
Right.
other dinosaurs came over and changed and evolved, and or what dinosaurs went over there and changed and evolved? I mean,
Yeah. And it seemed that there was at least like some kind of bridge because we know sauropods were starting to come up south, like at the very end of the Cretaceous.
they've got like is it sauropod remains or is it footprints? No, sauropod. They have sauropod tracks in that area where Russia almost meets Alaska.
Oh, sick.
We got them in like both areas, so there are definitely sauropods that came over.
Mm.
So I mean, who knows? I mean, what stuff definitely came. I mean, we all know of the land bridge that connected for the megafauna, but how long was that there? Was that
Not long. Like I think like the Isthmus of Panama formed like around 5 million years ago or so. Um, and animals were like already island hopping to North America and South America by then. So maybe that was the same case. Maybe these dinosaurs were, crossing across the pond.
I mean, yeah, I mean, and who knows? Maybe there was another land bridge and we just haven't proven it yet. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah. Once again, we need more data.
I mean,
It's a disappointing answer, but it's also exciting because
it gives you the chance to go try to find it, and that just
yeah,
it's part of the fun. I mean,
yeah, it's part of the science.
and I mean, who knows what's really out there?
Yeah. Yeah.
One
Still
day we might figure
covered.
out that there's some weird herbivore like large theropod that was like a herbivore.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it wouldn't be unlikely at this point. We've already found a few that have switched over to herbivory.
I mean, who knows? I mean, I always it's part of the fun. I mean,
It's an exciting time to be like a dinosaur nerd.
yeah, I mean, it's so many finds. There's so much going on. I mean,
Hmm.
just the
And
theories.
we're
Like,
learning so much. Like, we're learning more about dinosaurs like in the past few decades than we've learned about dinosaurs in the past century. Like, it's crazy to see how far
definitely.
science has come.
And I mean, you can definitely like. I feel like the easiest example to look at is I was about to say Metrocanthosaurus, but that's not right. What is it? Megalosaurus, which
Mm.
was like one of the first dinosaurs ever discovered and named.
Hmm.
You can see it started off as the weird four-legged big lizard iguana thing, and then it became the two-legged tail dragging, and then you get the more modern depictions, and then you see it with feathers, and now with lips and other
Hmm.
different features, and you can definitely see how not just like how the study has evolved, but like how the theories have come and been proven and
Hmm.
evolved. I mean,
Yeah.
and frankly, the saddest part is the vast majority of these creatures we may never figure out.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's kind of just something that we might have to accept is that these gaps in the fossil record, like for some of them, we might never be able to fill in.
I mean, because how many do you think lie at like just the bottom of the ocean?
Mm. I don't know, but I mean, we're starting to explore down there. Like, I think I saw a paper not too long ago about like the very first like deep sea megalodon tooth that had been found, like in the not trying to go back to megalodon, but they found like the first example of like a fossilized megalodon tooth in the deep ocean. So who knows? We're starting to get down there, and we're going to try and figure it out
I mean, we found dinosaurs like everywhere at this point.
everywhere.
So I'm not gonna be surprised if they're like, yeah, we just found 102 new species of dinosaurs at the bottom of the ocean. It's gonna be like, ooh, well, I mean, I I could see it. I mean, we found dinosaurs in Antarctica,
Yeah.
and I really wish I was there for that conversation to who decided to go start digging there.
Mm.
They're like, oh, we found some rocks.
Yeah.
Mind if we search for bones?
Yeah. I mean, they were really smart. I mean, it kind of makes sense. It's like
I
the
mean,
one of the few places where people hadn't looked yet.
I mean, I love Cryolophosaurus. It's one of my personal favorite dinosaurs.
Mm.
It's
Yeah.
up there. I mean,
One.
Cryolophosaurus is really interesting because the ice lizard. I mean, wow,
Yeah. Yeah. Elvisaurus.
Elvisaurus.
Yeah.
You have to.
We don't have Cryolophosaurus here in Arizona, but the first 5 skeletons of Dilophosaurus were found in Navajo County, like in northern Arizona.
Really? Huh.
Yeah.
I like Dilophosaurus too. Have you seen the what is that study? There's a new study coming out about like dinosaur vocalization.
I've seen a few things for that.
Have you heard the Dilophosaurus one? Everybody's talking about what all the famous ones are like. Oh, here's what Spinosaurus sounds like. Here's what Stegosaurus and T Rex and other dinosaurs sound like. But I, the Dilophosaurus one is what that's what really hit me because that one sounds nothing like what you would think Dilophosaurus sounds like.
Hmm.
'Cause- let me see if I can pull it up real quick.
It's a how.
I'm not listening
Oof,
to Fox
that's
News
terrifying.
ads. I'm not listening to Fox News ads. Apparently, you can't even skip it. Darn. Um. Here. It's just a bunch of Christmas ads at this point, which is a little annoying, but here. Here's the Jurassic period. You got it's like a whole study about how they sound and all that, and I ate this video. Cause I mean, it was really interesting because some of them I was not expecting what they would sound like.
Oh. Oh wow.
I mean,
Yeah, that's pretty scary.
because you think about it, I mean, things like Parasaurolophus and Edmontosaurus and all that, or all the what are they called, hadrosaurs and
Mm-hmm.
Saurolophans, however you say it, those things. I mean, they all have the crests and thing, and you're like, oh, they blow air through the crests and all that, and they make their noise, and we already know they're vocal and all that. But Dilophosaurus also had a crest.
Mm.
So I mean, was it vocal in the same way? Did it actually have vocal cords? Was it? I mean,
I mean the cassowaries, which have like something fairly similar, like their crest, they has recently been found to be like somewhat of a resonating chamber.
yeah. I
So
mean,
it's possible.
I mean, I love the Dilophosaurus is one of my like it's up there. It's a really interesting dinosaur that I feel doesn't get enough attention.
Yeah,
Because
it's a super cool dinosaur.
everybody looks at the Jurassic Park one and they're like, oh, it's a teensy little thing. If it comes after me, I'm just gonna slap it. It's like, no, that thing's like 2 times bigger than you.
Yeah, that
It
thing
will,
it's about grizzly bear sized, if I'm not mistaken.
it will bite you in half. It
Yeah,
does not care. And I mean,
It's pretty interesting. It's also like one of the earliest of the large theropod meat eating like one of the sorry, my words are getting all scrambled. They're like Dilophosaurus is one of the like earliest large theropod dinosaurs. Like it's pretty big compared to what came before it.
Because I was like looking at like some of the size of some of these dinosaurs, and I was like surprised in the Jurassic period because I'm like, you come across things like Allosaurus where you're like, okay, well it's fairly reasonable size. That's kind of how I imagine it being sized. But like Ceratosaurus, you're like, okay, that's got to be like a smidgen smaller than Allosaurus, and it's not. They are
Mm.
like tiny. They're as tall as like the average like man. I mean,
Mm.
in
There
like
you go, and
height.
that's a great example of how where we find sauropods, right? Because where we
Yeah,
find Ceratosaurus and Allosaurus, there are things like Diplodocus and Apatosaurus and Camarasaurus, and there's also things like Tortosaurus that are living at the same time as
yeah.
Allosaurus and Ceratosaurus, and in the same place.
And then you get like Dilophosaurus, which is even bigger than Ceratosaurus, which you're almost like that doesn't really you don't ever expect it because it's always been depicted as this smaller creature, but
Mm.
they probably bullied Ceratosaurus. I feel
If they'd ever met.
I feel like Ceratosaurus got like bullied a little bit in its time because
Oh,
they
well,
thought that
and it's right too. It's a pretty cool dinosaur. I mean, it
I
has
like
like
it.
enormous teeth
I
relative to
love
its
the
body
triple.
size.
I actually got a little Ceratosaurus up here. I mean,
Oh, cool. That's
I
cool. We
love
have those
Ceratosaurus.
figures at work. They're the Papo figures.
Oh yeah,
Those things are cool.
I have like a huge collection of them just right above my
Oh.
computer. So I hope the shelves don't ever give out.
Just
That
under
would
the weight of all those
that would be
dinosaur
a fun
figures.
day.
We speaking of dinosaur figures, we just got these super cool dinosaur action figures. They're called Beasts of the Mesozoic. They're super
Wow.
cool. We just put them up on our website like just now, but the guy that like made them, like he helped like Todd McFarlane make like some of his figures. The guy who made Spawn, and it's
Oh,
super cool. Like we have Centrosaurus right now. We have Ornitholestes, and we have like a little mini Velociraptor, and Avaceratops, I think is the other one.
yeah, I have to definitely check that out.
Oh
'Cause I
yeah, dude,
mean,
they're so cool. They're like the coolest. Like I had to get one. Like as soon as I saw them, like they're so cool.
that also that's a wicked name. Just
Yeah, right.
that's a
Beast
really
of the
awesome name.
Mesozoic.
Like I'm taking that name as soon as possible.
100%.
It almost sounds like one of those what was it? The History Channel that did the Walking with Dinosaur thing where they had
Oh,
the Ballad of Big Al and the uh
mm,
something with mammals or like
mm,
yeah,
yeah.
I'm forgetting
No,
all the
I know what you're talking about. I grew up with those shows. Like that, like Jurassic Park got a lot of people into dinosaurs, but like
the
watching like documentaries like Walking with Dinosaurs and
those
all
got
the other
me.
shows, that's what got me too. Like
I
it
I
was
still
just
have a
really
bag
cool.
somewhere. I have no idea where it is. It's probably on my door somewhere, but
Mm.
it was a live Walking with Dinosaurs thing with the giant
Oh,
robot.
yep,
And
yep.
I had like a short period where I was like, was that real? Was
Yeah,
that just
right.
did I make that up in my mind? And then I found the bag and I'm like, oh, it was real. It was like a real thing. And I've been like researching, seeing when it's going to come back so I can go look at it again or something. Just
Yeah,
relive
yeah, that was
the
like my whole childhood.
childhood
I love that
memories.
stuff.
Oh God, I need to find that bag because I usually use it to carry around all my dinosaur
Hmm.
like notebooks and things. I mean that was probably my first real like interaction with dinosaurs that probably that I forgot about because I was still had that dumb baby brain.
Oh, right. Well, like for me, it was because like I didn't start off liking dinosaurs. First before I really got into them, I was really into reptiles. Like I grew up in Australia, And like in the
Oh,
early
yeah.
2000s, like a lot of the like people my age at that time, like Steve Irwin was like a huge thing. So I grew up watching like a lot of Steve Irwin shows, watching his documentaries, and just really falling in love with reptiles. And like the idea of like these giant reptiles that once existed on our planet, like in that format too, where like, these are not monsters, these were actual animals that
Yeah, I
like,
mean,
behaved, like they had like different behaviors. They had, different ways of eating food, how they like raised their offspring. Like it was all really interesting to me, and that's kind of how like that passion for dinosaurs jumped off, was by watching shows like that.
yeah, I mean, you know what I found really bizarre? Did you know that it was a turtle that Steve Irwin had. It was the same turtle that Charles Darwin had.
Mm,
And it just
I got to
lived
see that
so
turtle.
long.
Yeah, I think I know which one you're talking about. It was
He outlived both of them. It's like
yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah, I
Turtles
I
are
remember I
amazing.
got to touch that animal, and like thinking back on it, it's like, oh my god, like this was an animal that Charles Darwin probably came into contact with.
It's like,
Like
that
it's pretty
turtles are
cool when you think
amazing.
about it.
I mean, I've got like a turtle shell in my case over here that I found. It's destroyed, so I need to put it back together.
Oh, cool.
That's going to be a project for like 4 or 5 weeks.
Yeah, is it like a fossil turtle, or is it
No,
a
it's like a normal turtle, but
gotcha?
it's still cool. I mean, turtle shells are still cool. I mean,
Oh yeah, I've been super into fossil turtles lately. Um, they're super cool. Like in the Hell Creek Formation, there's like over 30 different species of fossil turtle, and like their evolution is very interesting. Like they have a very
turtles
interesting
are really
evolutionary
amazing.
history.
So, I mean, of course you have turtles, but then you have like Ankylosaurus. Did
Mm.
Ankylosaurus come from turtles? Is there like
No,
some
no. So
relationship there?
like the ankylosaurs, they were definitely dinosaurs. Turtles, they're like their own weird group of reptiles. Like their origins actually predate the dinosaurs, which is super cool. Whereas like, they were a lot of different like armored animals. Like their body plans overall, like convergently, are very similar, but different groups of armored animals like evolved their armor in different ways, if that makes sense.
Yeah, Ankylosaurus definitely had something different than uh like an armadillo.
Yeah, right.
But a turtle
Turtles, they took it to the extreme. Like with
is
turtles, like because their shell, all that is, it's an extension of their rib cage.
yeah, I mean it's also like you can see where they kind of go together, but you can
Mm-hmm.
also see how the turtle kind of just slid inside a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
where it kind of just sat on the inside. And Ankylosaurus definitely. Oh, let me try not to knock everything down. It's got more like the ridges were in it.
Yeah, like
It was
those
spread
are like the
back.
scoots are like osteoderms. And like
Yeah,
those are just like bony deposits that like grow in the skin of an animal.
and you have something like Dunkleosteus, where its head is just one solid bone.
Oh yeah. Yeah, those guys are nuts.
I could not imagine accidentally running into one of those things.
Yeah. Yeah, that would have been interesting.
It's also funny that their extinction was like one of the reasons why sharks were able to like take over the ocean,
Mm. Yeah,
which
those
is
I found out not too long ago, like that group of fish that Dunkleosteus belongs to, like those animals were like some of the first, like one of the first groups of vertebrates to evolve like jaws and teeth. Like they're super cool.
I mean, their jaws were powerful.
Yeah.
I mean, I couldn't imagine having to swim with one of those things. That would be horrifying.
Right. I'm
Because it's
glad
just
they're
like, oh,
extinct.
bite you in half real quick. Like,
It still would have
okay.
been cool to see one though.
Oh yeah, no, it definitely would be. But Scary nonetheless. All those TikTok people, we found a real megalodon. It's like, no, you didn't.
Oh my gosh, yeah, I roll my eyes at that one.
I
I get
wish.
that question quite a lot at work.
Is megalodon still around? It's like, no, we would have spotted it by now.
Exactly.
Sharks is very rare. There are very few species of sharks that go that deep in the ocean.
Hmm.
Megalodon would not have been one of them.
Right. And like we would have seen signs of that by now. Like we would have found like whales that have been like, bitten in half that wash up on shore, or like non-fossilized megalodon teeth as
Oh yeah.
well.
Also, if there is like one alive, and when it dies out, I mean, it's just gone.
Yeah.
That would be the sad part. I mean, these people that are talking about, oh, they're trying to bring dinosaurs back, or they're trying to bring mammoths and Smilodon back, and I'm like, I
Yeah. I
watched
mean there's like a
Jurassic Park,
whole
man.
there's a cinematic universe, like 6 movies that show how bad of an idea that is.
It's like, hey man, I watched Jurassic Park. Let's keep them on the island this time.
Right. There's this really cool thing that's happening right now. I don't know how far along it is in terms of like being completed, but there's this thing called the Dino Chicken Project.
Oh, I've seen
And
that. Where they're
yeah,
like trying to like unleash some of the DNA in chickens, and they found that it has like more dinosaur-like teeth and or
right.
feet
Well,
and
it's
things.
like
I've seen that.
in an egg, like when chickens develop as an embryo, like they actually have like some, as they develop, they have these really interesting dinosaur traits. Like they have like teeth, they have like little arms and hands, and they even have like the beginning of a tail. So, theoretically, all you would need to figure out is which genetic switches to turn on and off.
Because
It's a lot more complicated than that, but, if you can do it, you would theoretically have a dinosaur chicken.
I mean, the DNA is still there. They came from dinosaurs, so the DNA
Mhm.
that was in dinosaurs is in there. It's just that certain traits are locked
Right,
and not being used and not being expressed.
right. And like you're
So,
never like the way it works too is like you're never going to bring back like a Tyrannosaurus through a
no,
chicken.
the
But
way we did it, the way they did it in Jurassic Park is not. I don't know why I put Jurassic Park in air quotes, but the way
oh
they
no, you're good.
brought back dinosaurs in Jurassic Park wasn't really accurate on how it was.
No, no, like, and DNA just degrades so quickly.
It sounded
Um,
very sciencey, and for the longest time, I thought that we could do it that way, and I was surprised that we haven't yet. But
yeah,
getting blood from amber mosquitoes is very unlikely.
yeah, yeah. But it. I think it makes for a really good science fiction story.
It does. It does. I mean, from like an actual movie standpoint, it's an amazing movie. I mean,
Yeah,
and it's also a movie, so you're supposed to like shut your brain off a little bit and just watch it and enjoy it.
right. Yeah, enjoy the creative liberty with it.
I mean, yeah. I mean, and they kind of answer that on their own question in it. They're like, we threw reptile and amphibian DNA in there, so it's kind of their excuse for it to be more of a reptilian-looking dinosaur. I mean,
Yeah,
they kind of worked it in there. So
right.
I mean,
Just a touch.
it's supposed to just shut your brain off and have fun with it. But I mean, I mean, dinosaurs themselves, I feel like will never be brought back.
No, no, I not in like the way that most people would think.
Mm.
Like even the mammoth stuff, like I have like my doubts about, because so many there's been so many reports of like, oh, like there's going to be like we're going to clone mammoths in the next 3 years, and then 3
We're
years
not
roll
going to be able
by.
to. The thing is, we're not going to be able to clone a mammoth. We don't have the mammoth DNA for that.
Right, like where are we even going to put them
But
when we do clone them?
put them in Siberia, put them in Alaska,
Oh, I see, that's the plan.
in the tundras. I mean, apparently they were like really good for like the tundra environments. So
Yeah, there was a whole habitat that was created by mammoths, the mammoth steppe, or
yeah,
the
I mean,
mammoth steppe.
and I don't think we'll be able to clone them, but we could definitely like selective breed elephants to get the genes that you want to turn them into
Right,
mammoths.
right. Which brings up a good point. Like, would it really be a mammoth
Or would
at
it just
that
be a
point,
new species?
or would it just be like a hairy Indian elephant?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
I feel like if you do it enough, it's going to be a new species, and we could call it Mammoth Facus,
mammoth facus.
the fake, the fake mammoth.
That's a good one.
But there are few species. There are very few species that we could like clone,
Hmm.
and like cloning technology isn't really there.
Right. I mean, it's starting to get there. Like CRISPR right now, like some of the things we've been able to do with like CRISPR technology is like really insane. So like as far as bioengineering goes, like who knows what it's going to look like. We're probably going to see some pretty crazy stuff in our lifetime, which is pretty neat to think about.
I was doing some like research one day, and I was just really like we were talking about like time zones or time not time zones but time periods earlier. I mean, the last mammoths went extinct during like Egypt.
Yeah. Yeah, there was like a little population of pygmy mammoths that were
On like an
making
island,
it all the way up to 4,000 years ago, like when the pyramids were being built.
and it's like
Pyramids in Egypt, I should say.
yeah, there's pyramids everywhere.
Hmm.
The Bass Pro Shop pyramid.
The Bass Pro Shop pyramid. A lot more recent.
That was all these people, all these ancient people building pyramids. Why haven't we done that today? We did.
Mm.
We turned it into a Bass Pro Shop.
Yeah, yeah. Cleopatra was closer to meeting the Bass Pro Shop pyramid than she was to meeting the very first Egyptian pyramids.
Yeah, I mean, it's the Bass Pro Shop pyramid is. And I mean, also, I feel like dinosaurs are the missing link between reptiles and birds.
Mm. Well, lately we've been reclassifying a lot of what it means to be a reptile, for example, because like technically like birds, if we're going off of the Linnaean cladistic system, like birds are technically reptiles. Um, and they're all archosaurs, and they're all part of the diapsid group as well. But it's interesting like what we call like reptiles that maybe we shouldn't call it a reptile, like dinosaurs for example. Like when you think of reptiles, you usually think of like slow, like sluggish kind of animals, but dinosaurs were very dynamic. Like they don't really
Very.
fit the traditional sense of a reptile.
Because you say reptile, you think of like the weird sunbathing lizard in the middle of the desert.
Right, like an ectothermic scaly animal
Yeah,
that mostly lays eggs.
we're talking about this. I don't know if you've seen this, but somebody wrote a book on why fish don't exist.
Oh,
So
I've got to read that.
it seems like a pretty odd thing, but you also think about it, and I mean, it's not that bizarre of a concept.
Mm.
I mean, a fish just seems like a lizard with gills. I mean, it's not that bizarre of a concept.
There's a really good book, if you ever want to read it. It's called Your Inner Fish by Neil Shubin. Have you ever read it before?
I don't think I have.
Give it a read. It's really good. It goes over Neil Shubin's discovery of this animal called Tiktaalik, which basically was like this missing link in the fossil record of water-dwelling fish that eventually transitioned into beginning to start to move out onto land, and how a lot of the like morphology and anatomy that we have today originates back to these early like fishopods, as Neil Shubin calls them.
I mean, I guess my only thing is like evolution is clearly there. It's clearly prevalent. It's clearly a thing. It's not deniable. And there are people who do deny it, but the evidence is almost hard fact by now. It's barely a theory anymore. The only thing that makes it a theory is, I guess, where did life start? Which is really, like, I think that were more theoretical things come into existence. Because we can all see that. So, I don't actually remember what we were even talking about. So,
yeah, you're good. You're good. I think we're just finished talking about Neil Shubin's "Your Inner Fish."
Yeah. So, I think we're both busy people. I think we got places to be. So I'm gonna go ahead and sign off here.
Right on, right on. Well, hey man, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Thanks for inviting me on your show.
Man. I need to get you back on here.
Yeah, dude, it was such a blast. I would love to be on another episode.
That would honestly be amazing. I mean,
and we got to get you to come over to our store down in Mesa.
I gotta go out there one day and just.
Yeah, you'd love it, dude. It's fossil heaven out here.
I need to spend like a month or 4 out west.
So,
oh, that's the wrong link. Remember, this is Tyrannostorus. Please go check out their Instagram. Let me open the right one. I'm trying to pull it up. There it is, right there. It should be there. So please go check out their Instagram. That's where I found them out at. So please go check them out there. They also have a website, which I'm going to try to pull up, hopefully. Right here. So please go check out their website too. That's where all their. I'm assuming that's where like all your content is.
Yep, that's all of our stuff.
All right, so I mean, I'm gonna let you go, man.
Sounds good.
It was great talking to you, and I will definitely stay in touch and have another episode with you.
Sounds good. Awesome. Have a good rest of your day, man. Thanks again.
You too. And of course, thanks for coming on, man.
Anytime.
So, while you're checking out their content, go check out our my website, Prehistoric Life Podcast. It's got everything on there. You can get to the YouTube, the Instagram. You can see all the episodes there. And from there, go check out both the Instagram page, which is where I put everything up. That's where you can figure out about when interviews are, when episodes are, what is going to be episodes on, plus additional content. So go check that out. And then, of course, go check out the YouTube page. That is where I upload things a little bit earlier. I try to upload things a little bit earlier on there just because why not? I mean, some days I'm just like, I want to upload this right now. So that's when I do that. That's what that's for. But yeah, make sure you definitely go check out Tyrannosaurus's page. He's got a lot of amazing content. So please go support him and what he does. But other than that, go check out the Prehistoric Life podcast page. Wrong hand. That's where I upload everything. So this has been the Prehistoric Life podcast. I'm your host, Eric Crawford. Signing off. Remember, keep it prehistoric. Goodbye.